Hi everyone, this is Steve Hess, Director of User Experience at BOM, and welcome to today's webinar. Make sure that everyone can hear me. Okay, I think everyone can hear me. Great, thank you again. Thanks for joining us. Again, my name is Steve Hess. I'm Director of User Experience at BOM, and it is my pleasure to bring you the 14th webinar in a series of weekly webinars on bills of material. And today's topic is who's who in BOM management. We're going to be taking we've been studying sort of the what and where and how of bills of material up to this point, and we thought it'd be a good idea to maybe take a look at the personalities, personas, and people that are involved in the BOM process. So this is meant to be an informal 30 minutes or less, emphasis on less, webinar today. It'll be backed up with a live demo. Please feel free to ask questions, raise your hand during the webinar. There will be some time at the end, of course, to ask questions as well. This webinar is not a deep dive into BOM theory or manufacturing. It is also intended to be a marketing-free event, although we will be using BOM to do a demo near the end of the webinar. Okay, this webinar, the slide deck will also be available along with the recording of this webinar. Usually get it posted about the next day. So you can review these. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on things like definitions. Here's the definition slide that we usually include, and a few things to note. Bills of material, part numbers, catalogs are often called inventories or item masters. You might hear me use those interchangeably. Part and property has something else that we might not spend too much time on today, but some of the key definitions of a bill of material. So let's start off with the definition of a bill of material, something that I do want to spend just a second on here. And in our last webinar, webinar 13, we spent a lot of time looking at the definition, what is a bill of material and what's included in that. I would recommend you take a look at that webinar number 13. The link is here on the deck or in our YouTube channel. And we started with a number of very academic, classic, Wikipedia kind of definitions, and we chewed it down to something that I think we all agreed that a bill of material is a list of materials, information, and quantities required in a process. So we're going to keep this in mind today as we go through this webinar. Materials, emphasis on information, and quantities required in the process. And we're going to try to exclude the more protracted definitions of bills of material, at least for today. So we're going to kind of think about that. I like to use the skateboard metaphor. If you've attended some of these webinars in the past, I like it because it has a structure that can be defined as a product structure. Most everybody understands it. It has instancing. There's multiple instances of screws. There's multiple instances of sub-assemblies, the axle assemblies, and there's other things like tape and other things that might be included on there that are not maybe in our CAD model. So again, I think it's a simple, it's a good metaphor for what we're working on. But today we're going to spend less time on product structure and BOMs and things, and more time on what does the community within my organization look like that either contributes to or consumes the information that's in my bill of material. And we're going to think about it sort of as a hybrid, a pseudo sort of process flow. And I realize there may be other parts in your manufacturing process, but we're going to look at, in this sample, we're going to look at sort of how a sample BOM, orbits through your organization and who interacts with it, and what information do they bring, to the BOM. So again, the emphasis is on who for this webinar. While we will dive down into the what a little bit, but we're going to focus on who and what those. I'm hesitant to use the word roles, but what their activities are within your company. So let's take a quick peek at this. You've had a chance to look at this. We go from sort of ideation. Our guy down here has an idea for a skateboard, and we follow a sort of a path, a data path through our organization that ultimately yields a shipment of a product out to a customer. And many of these things might look, certainly will look familiar to you. This box here, validate the item master, that is essentially, that's like looking in our inventory to see what parts we have on the shelf. So that's certainly a part of BOM and inventory management that we want to include right at the very beginning. So I've taken this slide and just added some more definition to it on the next slide to try to add a little bit of clarification to each one of these steps in the process. Again, the validate item master, let's just kind of think about that as materials on hand. How many wheels do I have? How many axles? How much tape? How many screws do I, do I keep track of screws, or I just kind of try to keep a couple hundred on hand? In this example, at my sample company, we're going to we're going to capture the BOM structure for the CAD, and the guy that's going to do that is going to be probably one of my engineers. And these other activities, purchasing, supply, line people. Do we have some shop floor manufacturing going on? Maybe there's a CNC operator, or maybe there's a subcontractor. It's a CNC operator that needs some information. And I have some assembly, and maybe I have a coordinate measuring machine to do some inspection. So with each one of these activities, there can be a lot of people, several people, or a single person responsible for the activity that goes on there. So in the next slide, I've kind of taken that. I've taken this sort of shotgun approach we have on the screen and built into a little bit more of a process. So this slide here takes those same boxes and starts to examine who are the people or the roles, but who are the people who are responsible in these particular activities of my process, and what do they need access to within my bill of material ecosystem? Are they someone who adds data or consumes it? Are they responsible for organizing the product structure? Where do the wheels go with respect to the axles, and how many of each are there? Or are they the stockroom folks that check to make sure we have enough screws on hand? That could also be done by by my accounting team. So let's take a little bit deeper dive into each one of these, and we'll sort of start to expose some of the information that I'll kind of be asking you to get together. And again, if you've attended some of these webinars in the past, you know that I'm a big fan of putting pencil to paper and just starting to write some of these things down. And you don't need a fancy flow chart or anything to start thinking about this and discussing it. Very important to discuss it within your organization. So let's take a look. The first thing we said was, hey, maybe we don't control the inventory that we have for for screws or in tape. So do we have a receiving clerk, or maybe a stockroom person? This could maybe even be someone responsible for in accounting that helps me understand what I have, what my stock on hand is. They need access to what we refer to as a catalog. Again, back to our definitions, the item master, inventory, these are all sort of interchangeable words. Stock on hand, they need to be able to read and write that information. So they'll need to be able to update that in my BOM or in my item master. Likewise, going on to creating our BOM structure and our assigning vendors and materials. These are probably people in the engineering or the design team. They may be interacting with CAD or Excel. Again, they will also need access to the bill of material, read and write access, and likewise for my manufacturing engineer or planner who might be assigning vendors to the particular items in the BOM that the designer has spec'd out, or possibly some materials. So as we move down through the process, we start to get into the supply line, purchasing folks. These are probably someone who in your SLM group that needs to be able to read some data from the bill of material. They need to collect demand. So what does that look like? They may have a particular view of the data. We're not going to cover that in this webinar. It's a good topic for next week. But perhaps they need the bill of material. They need to be able to read-only access, but maybe they also need a reduced version of it. They want to look at it through a lens so they don't see all this other information that frankly might not be important to them. Likewise, the machine operators, they might need access to the CAD data. They might need toolpath information. Same with our CMM folks. They probably need a read-only access to the BOM. And likewise for the other roles that are in the organization. So this type of a map will help you identify your BOM flow process, and then who specifically at those stages need access. And then the next step here would be, of course, to assign individual user accounts in your BOM. If you're using a BOM management tool, assign individual users with these particular permissions and then grant them access to the data. We're going to do that in a demo here in just a second. So this is what we want to go through in a live demo for our skateboard manufacturing company. Okay. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to open up a longboard assembly in SolidWorks. We're going to create a BOM and look at our inventory and catalogs. I'm going to share it with some personas that I've created, and then we're going to take a look at perhaps a way to manage this data in the context of a team, because that whole process that we just looked at really does kind of feel more like a team. So let me go ahead and get started. I have within SolidWorks, I have a SolidWorks skateboard, and this is an educational data set that comes from SolidWorks, as you can see, but it's a nicely formed set of models in CAD. I have the OpenBOM integration already installed. Excuse me. So without going into all the details, there's some settings inside OpenBOM that give instructions on what type of properties and some other templates and other things that we're going to that are going to be used to create this bill of material. And I'm going to go ahead and click the Create Bill of Material button. And we will create a bill of material for the skateboard in OpenBOM. Longboard, I created this multi-level, so longboard-ml was created. Okay. All right, so let's think back to our to our process. Who are the people that are involved? Well, of course, initially we had someone managing inventory and stock for us. So let's take a look at a single item, perhaps in our bill of material. We can tell that it is managed in a catalog called Longboard. And that catalog contains the inventory information, as well as a lot of other information about the items that are in our BOM. I'm just giving a second for a few people asking to slow down, let their screens catch up. So, okay. So we're looking at the catalog, the item master, the inventory for our skateboard company. And we can see right here that there's a quantity on hand associated with these particular items. And so the skateboard, my stockroom guy may be interested in being able to change those. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and share this catalog with my stockroom person. And while that is refreshing, I'm going to go ahead and sign in now in a incognito window as the stockroom guy. So what's my first step? I shared that bill of material, that catalog with my stockroom person, and he or she now has access to it. And they can go through and update quantity on hand for all the pieces that I have in inventory. Again, this may be managed automatically through your QuickBooks or other accounting software, but this may be a manual process as well. So this is how this would be done. You share this catalog with your team member that has those responsibilities. Okay, so that we see that we've changed this bearing. It looks like we have 15 on hand for that bearing, and when I return back to my role as a designer or someone, I see that I've got 15 on hand. Terrific. Okay, so that's the role of that person. Next, I'd like to create the I'd like to grant access to somebody perhaps that's in my on my manufacturing team. Maybe my manufacturing engineer is going to needs to set up vendors and materials and things for these. So I'm going to go ahead and share this catalog. I'm going to sign out as my stockroom guy. And as the creator of this, I'm going to go ahead and share it with my manufacturing team. And I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm just going to do this I'm just going to do this one more time so we don't have a lot of, just so you kind of get the hang of it. So let's go ahead and sign in now as my manufacturing engineer. Great. So now I am the persona of my manufacturing engineer. I've been granted access by my by my lead designer at my company. And what were some of those things that the manufacturing engineer was responsible for? Perhaps setting up and identifying vendors and adding materials. So we're going to use the open BOM command to set vendor lists. And when I do that, I see that vendors automatically start showing up in my inventory, and my manufacturing engineer can identify who these particular items come from, and he or she would go down through this whole list. We're not going to do that now. What was something else that the manufacturing engineer needed to do? I think that they also were responsible for identifying materials. So we don't have a location, we don't have a property yet as materials, so my manufacturing engineer is going to add material to this. And we're not going to go through all of this right now, but you can see that their responsibility might be to identify materials for all the items in our inventory. Very good. Manufacturing engineer signs out. We return back to our top level bill of material after we've seen a couple of our colleagues have worked on it. And we can see that we have updates to both our quantity on hand and as well as we have a new property here identified as material. So since we have built this as a multi-level bill of material, we can quickly expand it down, and as the leader of the BOM process here, we can see those changes here that we've added plastic and aluminum, and the quantity on hand have been updated. So let's kind of return just quickly and take a look at our my apologies, team here. Take a look quickly. Let's return quickly and take a look at our process slide. So here we are back at the who's who in the process, and we have taken just a kind of the first bite out of the first couple of boxes there. But you can see that we've make this a little larger for you. See that we've identified who our stockroom inventory managers are. We've shared our inventory with them. They've updated quantity on hand. We've done the same thing as our engineer. Our engineer created the bill of material physically out of SolidWorks. We shared it with our manufacturing engineer who assigned vendors and specific materials for specific items in our skateboard BOM. And as you can imagine, we could continue on down through this process. Now, we could, of course, just continue to share each one of these, this BOM and inventory with each individual explicitly. But I'd like to introduce you to a feature of Open BOM that will help us when we're working with a team, and that feature is teams. So I'm going to open up the screen as a team administrator. We're going to take a quick peek at this. Team administration and team members. The team administrator grants access to users to the team, and if you are on the team, you automatically have access to the resources for that BOM, so the bill of material, inventories, things like this. So here you can see that my team has a number of people assigned to it. In Open BOM, of course, I can control what their roles are, maybe their read or write or their by view. Again, that's something that we're going to discuss a little more in a little more detail. But you can see here that I have a subcontractor that's already assigned as a member of my team. So I'm gonna return back to our bill of material, and I'm going to say, look, I'm going to look at it and see that, oh, that's not shared yet with my subcontractor. However, since my subcontractor is a team member, he or she can sign in to their Open BOM and have access to that bill of material without me having to explicitly share it with them. Not only that, they also gain access to that bill of material through the permissions that are governed by when I set up the team. And we're going to spend more time on team next week. But I just wanted to illustrate that now I'm signed in as my subcontractor. I do not have my subcontractor. I define that as read-only. So even though others that are in my process might have write permission to this bill of material, my subcontractor only sees it as read-only. They still have access to the other features. They can view it in multi-level, and like I said, next week we're going to learn how to control, even more greatly control access to this as a subcontractor. But the benefits and features of being a team are very helpful when trying to bring people in, bring the who's who into my BOM process. So, okay, with that, looking at the time, I'd like to jump back to our presentation here and just take a quick summary of what we've done, and then I'll take a couple of quick questions. So the secret to, which is not a secret now, but the secret to success in this process is to share BOMs, catalogs, excuse me, with your team. And we can do that explicitly, as we saw. We pulled up the share dialog and we shared with each other, or we can use a feature that's available in some BOM management tools to define a team. So I really encourage you to take a look at that. Getting the information out to your people is the secret. And I'm not going to read each one of these, but start off, write down your process, identify who your functions are, identify who those people and those accounts are, build a process within your company. Consider using team or some tool that has a team component. Share your data out, print out that workflow and hang it on the office, hang it on your wall in your office so that it's right in front of you and we can discuss it when people come in and talk about the BOM process. And take a look at our past webinars. There's a couple that are on essentials to effective BOM that I think that you'll enjoy, and the link will be here at the end. So here's some references. Again, we'll share this out with you, so I won't go through these, but there's some links to some earlier webinars and some basics, as well as some other sites. So let me take any questions that we might have. Okay, I've got one. Okay, what are views? Okay, so yeah, views are a lens that you share the data through with people on your team or people outside your team. So when we're going to deal with this in next week's webinar, but for example, I may want to share my skateboard with a subcontractor that's going to be doing, just cutting the deck. So when I share that BOM with my subcontractor, all they'll see is the deck, and they won't see other information like cost and lead times. We don't want to expose all that to our subcontractors. So a view is a way to more tightly control beyond read and write what information someone who shared in can see. So I'm sorry. I know that there might be another question. Hang on, I've got one more question. Yeah, okay. The YouTube playlist is available here. So you can go to you go to this link and you can see the YouTube playlist for all the other webinars. So please go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, I really want to be sensitive to the time. If there are any additional questions, please send them to support@openbom.com. Again, this is Steve Hess, Director of User Experience for OpenBOM, and it has been it's been a pleasure spending the day with you. So have a great day. Bye-bye.